on Sunday said that Cheryl's figure was just the tip of the iceberg in the emerging scandal. So for more on this, let's welcome in Hans von Spakovsky, who is the Senior Legal Fellow at Advancing American Freedom. And this is unsurprising, obviously, because if we're not going to require proof of citizenship, then we're basically taking the word of the individual voters who check the box, citizen versus non-citizen, rather than having some sort of actual proof. So is this story, though, and this revelation ultimately going to be helpful in the overall battle for election integrity?
Well, it is, Jenna, helpful in the fact that, all those, particularly in Washington, the Democratic leadership, opposed to the SAVE Act, which is stuck in the Senate, required proof of citizenship, keep saying, well, there's just not a problem. There's no problem with aliens registering and voting. And look, a key thing to remember in this New Jersey story that folks keep missing is that these actually were honest aliens. When they were asked whether they were a U.S. citizen or not, they checked, no, I am not a U.S. citizen. But New Jersey registered them to vote anyway. And what that means is, what we don't know is, well, how many more aliens are there who actually answered, yes, I am a United States citizen, and got registered and are still registered to vote in this state? We don't know.
Right.
And the only way to try to fix that is to require proof of citizenship. But also, New Jersey is one of the states that refuses to access the available Department of Homeland Security database to help verify citizenship. It's called the SAVE system, and a lot of red states have actually started using it. New Jersey refuses to do that.
Well, which now that this has been uncovered, maybe there will be some political pressure on New Jersey and also other states to actually use that. And the New Jersey governor is blaming this on a software malfunction that went ahead and, registered these honest illegals anyways, which is obviously a little bit of an interesting perspective. But does this particular case in New Jersey now, what happens to those 6,600? I mean, are they planning to be removed from the voter rolls? Is there a follow-up on this? Well,
New Jersey says they're taking off the rolls, but at the very same time that the New Jersey governor, I think at her press conference, was talking about how she's all for transparency, she's refusing to release any information on these voters and registered voters to the Department of Justice. Now, we should remind everyone, it is a felony under federal law to register if you're an alien or to vote if you're an alien. And, she's trying to downplay this, the governor is, by saying, well, only 400 of these aliens voted. Well, last year in New Jersey, they had 2 local races that ended in a tie vote. They had another election, a third, decided by 1 vote. And in the last 10 years, they've had a dozen elections in New Jersey decided by less than 10 votes. So her claim that this just doesn't matter is just not true.
Well, and the question still remains is how much fraud is okay with her?
Right.
She may diminish the number of 400, but as you wisely point out, no, that is a critical number, and that could have the opportunity to shift the outcome of some elections in New Jersey. But whether it's 400 or 4,000 or 40,000, that still matters because the overall process matters. And so the downplay of this is basically that they're trying to say that this was just an isolated software failure, but I think it's evidence of a broader systemic weakness.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. And by the way, we should point out that the company, the software company that the governor is saying it's their fault, they've come out, they've been handling New Jersey for decades. It's a company called IDEMIA. And IDEMIA said, no, the state had access to the data showing these individuals were not citizens, but the DMV and state election officials registered them anyway. The company says this has nothing to do with the software. This was the state of New Jersey going ahead and registering these people anyway, despite knowing they were not U.S. citizens.
Wow. And somehow I believe the company here, because that sounds exactly like what states have been doing. And so is this a problem that the SAVE Act, if passed, would actually solve?
Yes, because the SAVE Act would require proof of citizenship. It gives the U.S. Department of Justice the authority to enforce the law. So if a recalcitrant blue state like New Jersey, I just refuse to do it, refuse to require proof of citizenship, DOJ could go to court and get a court order forcing them to do it, which, listen, it would be great if we can get the SAVE Act passed, but I have no doubt it would take lawsuits by the Justice Department to force places like New Jersey, and particularly California, to actually comply with the law.
And isn't that wild? I mean, when you have that in place, it's the question is, why wouldn't they comply? And why would they, if this allegation is accurate, that these election officials knew and they went ahead and registered these illegals anyway? The question then remains is, why would they possibly be doing this against even their own current state law?
Well, I'll tell you, if you talk to any political consultant, they will tell you quietly behind the scenes a fact that is known to everybody in the business, and it's simply this. The higher the number of citizens in a particular political district, the greater the probability they'll elect a Republican. The higher the number of aliens in a district, the greater the probability a Democrat will get elected. They won't admit this publicly, but they want aliens registering and voting and getting away with it because they think it will help them stay in power and get elected. I mean, that's the plain reason for it.
And that makes sense, because if it were the opposite, in fact, and there was a higher probability of a Republican being elected in a district that was highly populated with illegals, you would see Democrats closing the border, building a wall, up to the moon. They would be the ones fighting against this. And so unless there was some kind of advantage to them or on multiple fronts, then they wouldn't be pushing so hard against some of these common sense measures. And, President Trump made an address from the Oval Office a couple of weeks ago, and really the point of it, of course, was to push for the SAVE Act. And it is incredibly frustrating that the Senate, under John Thune's leadership, refuses to eliminate the filibuster to simply get this passed. If they were to go ahead and eliminate the filibuster, do you think that as it currently stands, they would have the votes with perhaps Vice President Vance's tiebreaker even?
Well, maybe, but, we're facing the problem that Lisa Murkowski is staunchly against the SAVE Act. The outgoing North Carolina senator is staunchly against it. Mitch McConnell previously voted against it, but as you know, he's still in the hospital. He hasn't been there for votes. And Sarah Collins, she has voted against it in the past. She's given indications now she might approve it, but as you know, she's in a big fight to retain her seat in Maine. So I don't know.
Which is just incredibly sad. And this is where primaries matter and who we elect matters. And so this may be the point of the whole thing, is that Thune isn't willing to have the PR battle and the overall political battle of eliminating the filibuster just to have this fail anyway. I mean, he would need to know that he has the votes before going and doing something like that. But absent the SAVE Act passing, which, I think is just a disaster for the GOP and a real indication that we're not all actually on the same team, What other potential options are there for Congress to at least get a few of the provisions? I mean, voter ID and, citizenship, proof of citizenship are kind of the big ones. But what are some other ways that Congress could implement election integrity measures absent, passing the full SAVE Act?
Well, Lily, that's difficult because, as you know, the states are pretty much responsible for most election administration. What I actually have recommended to state legislators, although you and I both know it's only going to happen in red states, is that they should pass their own state version of a SAVE Act. They could then apply the proof of citizenship requirement to state elections. They can't apply it to federal elections, but even just doing that would be a big help. It would be a partial remedy, not a full remedy, which is what the SAVE Act in Congress would do. But passing their own version of that would be a big help. And yeah, they can't get it done before this November election unless they called into special session, but most state legislators are in session for the first 3 months of each year. So in 2027, passing a state version of the SAVE Act they could do that in time for the 2028 presidential election.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate that more states didn't do this ahead of the midterms. So looking ahead to the 2026 midterms, where should the GOP be focused in terms of what election officials are doing right now to prepare? Because there's been a lot of questions about election integrity in the midterms as well.
Well, they should be doing everything they can to use the federal database at the Department of Homeland Security, the SAVE database. The Trump administration really improved it. The Biden administration did everything they could to prevent states from using it. The Trump administration came in and not only made it free to use to states to check their voter lists, but they changed it software-wise to allow basically bulk comparisons. It used to be you could only check one name at a time, and the Trump folks at DHS change the software so that states can upload large numbers of registered voters and check their citizenship status against the DHS database. As I said, a number of states are doing that, Florida, for example, and they are finding aliens on the voter rolls.
Wow. And something absolutely needs to be done on that. And it's incredible that it seems like with respect to election reform, Democrats and Republicans can't realistically agree on anything because they don't want to undermine the political advantage and the reality of that political advantage for the Democrat Party. But Hans von Spakovsky, really appreciate your time today. You can follow him on X, and you can also follow Advancing American Freedom. And that's all the time that we have this morning. You can always reach me and my team, Jenna, at afr.net.